So Wikipedia tells me.
Angel in New York.
Hi, thank you for waiting very patiently.
Thank you very much. Hi.
Hi.
So I wanted to know your stance about a comment that my cousin said pretty recently. This is what she said on Facebook. My son brought home a book from school which has information about sharks and other sea creatures which he loves so much. I opened the book to the first page, and in that first page, there's a sentence, and it reads, "We are directly descended from the fish that first walked on land." Shaking my head. Really? If only I could only keep books like this out of his reach. Now, keep in mind that your son is 5 years old. So I want to know what your stance on this is and how you guys feel about enforcing your religion or your beliefs on your child.
Well, I think she's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, my first comment is, ha ha.
Yeah. But it is a real hazard to this kid, I think, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry that the school is not going out of their way to coddle her her incorrect belief, but we do have a responsibility to educate our kids and bring them up with the best scientifically accurate information that is known right now. And it doesn't serve anyone to sort of tiptoe around these people's religious beliefs and not teach them that, to pick a more extreme example, teach in school that the Earth is only 6,000 years old and that there was a literal pair of people walking around them at the beginning, or that there was actually a global flood at any point when there's absolutely no archaeological evidence of that whatsoever.
And that this God who supposedly created the entire universe and all the worlds in it through an act of will still somehow needed a rib to make a woman. I mean,
yeah.
So
I mean,
they needed a story editor on that part of Genesis.
I feel sad for this kid, and I feel like the kid is in for a lot of conflict. As was it a boy or a girl?
It's a boy.
Yeah, as he grows up, he's going to have this push and pull all the time, and you know, it's not uncommon for fundamentalists to actually pull their kids out of school and try to teach them everything themselves, which I think is often disastrous to their level of actual knowledge in the end.
You know, and you would think, I have this zero tolerance policy towards, you know, inflicting, you know, or prohibiting kids from, you know. It's the worst thing you can do to a kid is just like prohibit them.
Hide stuff.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so my solution to, you know, any parent who was like, oh, I must take away the evil evolution book would just be to, like, you know, psst, kid, here's more evolution books. You know, if you know, if the religion really were this great truth, and there's another thing I wanted to kind of get on Christian about, which is sort of like, you know, with all this adaptability that goes on, simply so, you know, because religions need to remain relevant, suddenly this whole idea that there's an absolute truth that they are promoting pretty much goes out the window, right? But, you know, it does not speak well, you know, to the dedication and the faith that these people claim that they have, that they must, you know, run in terror, you know, from a challenge like this. You know, and sure, certainly a lot of creationists have not done that. They have attempted to mount their own little pseudoscientific counter to evolution. But at the end of the day, you know, this is, you know, the data is on the strata, and this is where, you know, the evidence is with us. And so it seems like, you know, like Russell, you talked about how, you know, you went through this whole exercise with Ben about, like, you know, here is how we distinguish what's true from what's not true, and, you know, and you went into...
I considered that one of the most important lessons I ever taught him.
Yeah, this whole depressing exercise in building thinking skills, actual thinking skills, how depressing. Yeah, so you know, the fact that, you know, she is not willing to do that with her son, you know, and if she does that and he sees, you know, here both of these different accounts, and he is still able to decide that Christianity offers the correct answer to biodiversity, then, you know, he's done that through that thought process. But I think she knows deep down that that would not be the conclusion he'd reach. So she has kind of essentially validated, and she's handed evolution the win there by stealing the book away, because she has essentially admitted, my religious beliefs that I want to raise my child up in cannot stand up to this, to the first sentence in this children's school book. And so, I mean, that's pretty much a concession on her part. And so,
if and when the school ever sent home a book with information that I fundamentally disagreed with, my first reaction would not be to take the book away. I would sit down and read it with him, and then I would say, look, this is wrong and here's why. And you need to be aware of this thing the school's trying to push on you.
Here is the accurate information. Here are the sources where that accurate information comes from. Let's look at both of these.
Because that's the only way that you truly learn to insulate yourself from bad ideas. Because someday my kid is going to be a grown-up and he's not going to have me pulling everything out of his hands that doesn't agree with my preconceptions.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and it also upsets me that he's like really interested into science. He's only 5 years old, and so he wants to be a paleontologist, and so
he's not going to be a paleontologist if he rejects evolution.
Yeah, that's and the funny thing is that his mom does not believe in dinosaurs because they were not mentioned in the Bible.
Oh, Lord.
So she's,
That's really sad.
Yeah, so it's really upsetting that, in the future, let's say if he does become a paleontologist, he'll kind of be of disapproval from his mother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, lots of kids have gone through that, and I think it's your job now to be the supportive adult in his life.
Yeah, but again, you cannot, no parent can be that protective forever.
Yeah.
And that's when we get them.
Yeah. And so, it's just kind of, it's like the dad's porn mags. The kids will find them. If they're in the house, the kids will freaking find them, right? So the more you try to shield from, it's me, Russell, come on.
Okay.
So hiding, like Russell said, hiding something from a child is the surest way to make them want that thing even more, right? I mean, you want what you can't have, and if something is, ooh, Mom, it's like, ooh, Mom's worried about this, so that is just going to kick in that rebellious streak, so she's not really doing herself any favors.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, well,
one of the arguments that I actually used for her, why dinosaurs never existed because they were never in the Bible. I was like, well, you have a cat in your home, right? Cats weren't mentioned in the Bible, were they? So you still have a cat in your home. He obviously still exists.
Pizza's not in the Bible.
Cars aren't in the Bible. The internet's not in the Bible.
Yeah.
They all still exist.
Yep. Okay.
Well, thank you, Angel. Yep. We went quite a long time with Christian, so we want to get a couple more calls in.
Yeah. Thanks very much for calling.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.